The full moon has risen over the Innistrad province of Kessig. Its denizens now cower in fear as their neighbors transform right in front of their very eyes. At the head of the packs of werewolves stands the proud Ulrich of the Krallenhorde. He stands alone as the alpha werewolf and as our powerful commander. Ulrich of the Krallenhorde and Ulrich the Uncontested Alpha is the long-awaited flip werewolf legendary creature that many Magic the Gathering players have waited for since we left the original Innistrad. As it stands though, there are some players who find Ulrich's abilities to be relatively underwhelming in terms of synergy with other wolves. But that's not to say that we're unable to build a fun and potent commander deck with him at the helm. He still has some very powerful abilities that we can make use of, and for our deck today, we're going to be going with a very heavy aggro style deck that focuses on attacking our opponents with our powerful pack of wolves. Let's start with some of our key werewolf creatures. Duskwatch Recruiter helps us to filter through our top deck to important cards, and when it flips, we'll get a very helpful cost reduction on our creature spells. Gaia Reach Bandit, perhaps one of my favorite werewolves, flips into a powerful Vilden Pack Alpha, who allows us to immediately transform our werewolf creatures when they hit the battlefield. That's insane value when we look at some of the power of our flipped creatures. Speaking of, our next two creatures are even more value, the Hermit of Natternals and the Huntmaster of the Fells. The Hermit will give us some very welcome card draw, more so as it flips, and the Huntmaster of the Fells is a very strong werewolf that many players had hoped would return as a legendary creature in Eldritch Moon, or at the very least would have been something Ulrich had emulated. Immerwolf is a nice lord to both wolves and werewolves, which we want to know are two separate tribes of creatures, and it keeps our non-human werewolves transformed, so we don't have to worry about who's casting how many spells. Master of the Wild Hunt isn't quite subject to lycanthropy, but he will give us an increasingly larger pack of wolves that can easily take out opponents' forces. Mayor of Avabrook is another nice lord that benefits to humans when he's topside, and benefits werewolves and wolves when he's flipped. Mondrian Shaman on her own does very little to affect the board state, but Tollivar's Mage Hunter will deter your opponent from casting too many spells lest they get shocked for each one. Pyreheart Wolf will make your creatures even harder to block by giving creatures menace until the end of the turn. Finally, Vigor will help make our creatures ridiculously powerful, and as a side note, Vigor makes the fight mechanic that this deck has many instances of even more deadly, as when your opponent's creatures would deal their damage to your creature will not only be unharmed by the damage, but the buffed power will make them even more powerful. Now for a little bit of non-creature spells. Tutors are always helpful, so we're free to include as many as we can afford to include. My recommendations are Worldly Tutor, Signal the Clans, Chord of Calling, Green Sun Zenith, and Eldritch Evolution. Fires of Yavimaya will give your army haste, and you can sack it to buff your army by 2 power and toughness until the end of the turn should you need the little extra oomph. Full Moon's Rise and Howlpack Resurgence both buff your army, and each one will come with an added ability that makes them must-haves in this deck. Gruul War Chant will give your army a buff and make them even harder to block. Shared Animosity will give you a larger bonus the more creatures share a creature type. Given that we're running quite a few werewolves and wolves, we're going to get quite a buff out of this. Lastly, we run 2 specific planeswalkers, the obvious Arlinn Kord, who, if we can manage to get her ultimates off on the flip side, we basically win, and Sarkhan Vol, who gives us extra added aggression, and we can get some dragons out of him. Our mana base is in Gruul color, so red and green are needed, so break out the forests and break out the mountains. We don't run a whole lot of red in terms of mana cost, so most of our red mana can come in the forms of the various dual lands. Obviously, Cavern of Souls for the tribal assist is a definite want for this deck. Kessig Wolfrun can give a huge buff and trample as well as flavor. And Shinka the Blood-Soaked Keep, which gives our commander first strike in a pinch for a little added push with his attacks. We also run Skarg the Rage Pits to give a creature a little buff as well as trample. That's going to do it for our deck tech on Ulrich. We get our pack primed and raring to pounce your opponent, and then we go in for the kill. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give us a like if you want to see more deck techs like this one, and if you're new to the channel, I hope you consider becoming a subscriber today.